What happens when a beloved Hollywood legend sits down for what should be a routine chat show appearance, only to find himself facing the most hostile interrogation of his career? It only took 36 seconds for one presenter's shocking outburst to turn a friendly morning show into absolute chaos, revealing the ugly truth about what really goes on behind the cameras when the spotlight fades. The Loose Women studio buzzed with its usual pre-show energy that Tuesday morning. Cameras rolled, lights blazed hot overhead, and the familiar purple and pink set gleamed under the studio lights. 4 women sat around the iconic table, ready to dive into another episode of daytime television's most talked-about panel show. Denise Welch adjusted her microphone one final time, her jaw already set in that familiar way that regular viewers knew meant trouble was brewing. To her left sat Ruth Langsford, the show's veteran anchor, shuffling through her notes with practiced efficiency. Colin Nolan occupied the third chair, her warm smile masking the tension she could already sense building in the air. At the far end, Janet Street. Porter tapped her bright red nails against the desk, her sharp eyes scanning the studio for any sign of drama. The guest of the day was none other than Sean Bean, the legendary actor whose gravelly Yorkshire accent had captivated audiences for decades. From his breakout role as the doomed Boromir in Lord of the Rings to his unforgettable turn as Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, Bean had built a career on playing characters who met dramatic ends. Today, however, he had no idea he was walking into his own real-life dramatic finale. Bean settled into the guest chair with the easy confidence of someone who had done hundreds of interviews. His weathered face carried that familiar mix of ruggedness and vulnerability that had made him a fan favorite across generations. He wore a simple black blazer over a gray shirt, looking every inch the distinguished gentleman that his fans adored. Ruth opened the show with her trademark warmth, introducing their guest with genuine enthusiasm. "Sean, welcome to Loose Women. We're thrilled to have you here today." The conversation started smoothly enough, with Bean discussing his latest project, a gritty crime drama where he played yet another character destined for tragedy. "It seems like you always end up playing characters who die," Colin laughed, leaning forward with interest. "Do you ever get tired of meeting such dramatic ends on screen?" Bean chuckled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Well, I suppose I've made a career out of it, haven't I? There's something quite liberating about playing characters who aren't afraid to face their fate head on. In real life, though, I try to avoid the sharp objects." The audience laughed along, clearly charmed by his self-deprecating humor. Even Janet, known for her cutting remarks, seemed genuinely entertained by his easygoing nature. She jumped in with a follow-up. "Speaking of sharp objects, how do you prepare for those intense death scenes? Do you draw from personal experience?" Bean nodded thoughtfully. "Preparation is key. I spend a lot of time researching the character's backstory, their motivations. For Boromir, it was about honor and redemption. For Ned Stark, loyalty and the cost of doing what's right. It's not just about the death, it's the journey there." Ruth smiled approvingly. "And you've got quite the range beyond the dying heroes. Tell us about your early days in theater. Sheffield, wasn't it?" "Aye, Sheffield Playhouse," Bean replied, his accent thickening with fond memories. "Started out doing Shakespeare, classics like Romeo and Juliet. Tough crowds up north. They'd let you know if you were rubbish." The panel chuckled, and Colin added, "We've had our share of tough crowds here too." The banter flowed naturally for the first few minutes, with Janet probing about his collaborations with directors like Peter Jackson and the Game of Thrones cast. Bean shared anecdotes about filming in New Zealand, the camaraderie on set, and how he once broke his ankle during a stunt but powered through. But Denise had been unusually quiet, her fingers drumming against the desk in an increasingly agitated rhythm. Her colleagues had grown accustomed to her occasional mood swings, but today felt different. There was an electric tension in the air, like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks. The clock on the studio wall ticked past the 5-minute mark, and Ruth steered the conversation toward Bean's personal life. "You've got quite a busy schedule ahead. How do you balance work with family life?" It was an innocent question, the kind of softball query that guests typically welcomed. Bean smiled and began to answer, talking about the importance of spending time at home between filming commitments. Family is everything to me, he said, his voice carrying genuine emotion. After all these years in the business, you realize that the relationships you build off camera are what really matter. My daughters keep me grounded. They don't care about the fame. They just want Dad to be there for school plays and Sunday roasts. The studio audience murmured their approval, clearly touched by his sincerity. Ruth nodded encouragingly, while Colin smiled warmly. Janet even looked impressed, adding, "That's refreshing in an industry full of egos." But Denise's expression had darkened considerably. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes narrowed as she watched Bean speak. The other presenters began to notice her shift in demeanor, exchanging subtle glances of concern. At exactly 36 seconds into this segment, 6 minutes into the interview overall, Denise suddenly interjected, her voice cutting through Bean's words like a blade. "That's all very touching," she said, the sharp edge in her tone immediately changing the atmosphere in the studio. "But let's talk about what really matters here." Bean looked genuinely confused by her sudden hostility. "I'm sorry," he asked, pausing mid-sentence. "Don't play innocent with me," Denise snapped, leaning forward aggressively. "You come on here talking about family and relationships, but what about your responsibilities to your fans? What about the promises you make to deliver something fresh instead of the same old drivel?" The confusion on Bean's face deepened. Ruth tried to intervene, sensing the conversation taking a dangerous turn. "Denise, perhaps we should..." "No, Ruth." Denise cut her off sharply. "I'm tired of celebrities coming on this show and feeding us lines while they ignore the people who made them famous in the first place." The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. Camera operators exchanged worried glances while the production team scrambled to figure out what was happening. Bean sat perfectly still, his years of professional experience helping him maintain composure despite unexpected attack. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," Bean said carefully, his voice remaining calm and measured. "If I've done something to upset you, perhaps you could explain what you mean." His reasonable response only seemed to inflame Denise further. Her face flushed red, and her voice rose. "What I mean is that you actors think you can just show up, smile pretty, and expect everyone to fawn all over you, but some of us see right through it. We've heard these family stories 1,000 times. It's all PR spin." Colin looked horrified by her colleague's behavior. "Denise, this is completely inappropriate. Sean is our guest, and he deserves to be treated with respect." "Respect?" Denise laughed bitterly. "What about respecting the audience? What about respecting the people who tune in every day expecting honest conversation, not some rehearsed publicity nonsense?" Bean's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I came here today in good faith, ready to have an honest conversation about my work and my life. I'm not sure what's triggered this reaction, but I assure you that everything I've said has been completely genuine." Janet tried to diffuse the situation with humor. "Well, this is certainly more exciting than our usual Tuesday morning chat about the weather." "Sean, ignore her. Tell us about that time you almost drowned filming GoldenEye." But Denise was beyond reason now. She turned on Janet with equal venom. "This isn't a joke, Janet. This is about integrity. This is about holding these people accountable for their actions." "What actions?" Ruth demanded, her professional composure finally cracking. "Sean has done nothing but answer our questions politely and professionally. This behavior is absolutely unacceptable." The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether they were witnessing genuine drama or some kind of elaborate setup. But the raw emotion in Denise's voice and the obvious discomfort of everyone else made it clear that this was very real. Bean finally showed the first signs of losing his patience. His Yorkshire accent became more pronounced as his voice took on a steely edge. "Now look here. I don't know what your problem is, but I won't sit here and be insulted for no reason. I came here as a favor to the show, not to be ambushed by someone with an axe to grind." "A favor?" Denise shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that made the studio microphone squeal with feedback. You think you're doing us a favor by gracing us with your presence. The arrogance is absolutely staggering. Colin stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. That's enough, Denise. This has gone way too far. Sean, I apologize on behalf of the show. This is not how we treat our guests. But Denise wasn't finished. She rose from her seat as well, pointing an accusatory finger at Bean. Don't you dare apologize for me, Colin. Someone needs to call out this entitled behavior. These celebrities think they can just waltz in here and expect us to bow and scrape. Bean's composure finally cracked completely. He stood up slowly, his full height imposing in the bright studio lights. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded respect on movie sets around the world. Right, that's quite enough of this nonsense. I don't know what's got into you, love, but I won't be spoken to like this by anyone. I've been nothing but polite and professional since I walked through that door. The studio erupted into chaos as Denise's rage reached its boiling point. The words that came out of her mouth next would be replayed across social media for weeks to come, her face contorted with fury as she jabbed her finger toward Bean with vicious intent. Polite and professional, she screamed, her voice cracking with the strain. You call it professional to show up here unprepared, giving us the same tired answers you've been recycling for 20 years. You think we're idiots who can't see through your act? Bean's eyes flashed dangerously. The same intensity that had made him legendary on screen now focused entirely on the woman attacking him without cause. What act? I came here to talk about my work, my family, the things that matter to me. If that's not good enough for you, then maybe you should find yourself a different job. The studio gasped collectively. Ruth's mouth fell open in shock while Colin covered her face with her hands, unable to watch the carnage unfolding before her. Janet sat frozen, her usual quick wit abandoning her in the face of such unprecedented chaos. Different job. Denise's laugh was sharp and bitter. I've been doing this job longer than you've been pretending to be an actor. I've interviewed real stars, people with actual talent, not wash. Duphez, Beans trading on past glory. The insult hit its mark. Bean's face darkened, and for a moment, the studio held its collective breath. Here was a man who had faced down orcs and dragons on screen, who had portrayed kings and warriors with unwavering strength, but nothing had prepared him for this kind of unprovoked personal attack. Wash, Dup. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. Lady, I've forgotten more about acting than you'll ever know about presenting. At least when I do my job, I don't spend my time tearing down innocent people for cheap entertainment. Ruth finally found her voice, though it shook with emotion. Denise, stop this right now. You're embarrassing yourself and this show. Sean has done nothing to deserve this treatment. But Denise whirled on Ruth with equal fury. Don't you dare tell me how to do my job, Ruth. Just because you're content to sit there and lob softball questions doesn't mean the rest of us have to play along with this charade. Charade. Ruth's professional mask slipped completely. The only charade here is you pretending to be a journalist while behaving like a playground bully. The audience began to 20 minutes of escalating verbal volleys, with Denise accusing Bean of phoning in performances and coasting on fame, while Bean defended his 40-year career, listing roles from Sharp to The Martian. He recounted specific challenges, like learning archery for Lord of the Rings or enduring freezing conditions in Game of Thrones. Denise countered by mocking his death trope, claiming it was lazy typecasting. Colin tried multiple interventions, sharing her own experiences with difficult interviews to calm things, while Janet attempted more quips about Bean's resilience. You've survived worse than this, White Walkers. Ruth pleaded for civility, reminding everyone of the live audience and viewers at home. By the 12-minute mark, Denise demanded Bean admit to selling out in recent projects. Bean fired back with details of his craft. I study scripts for weeks, work with dialect coaches, immerse myself. That's not coasting, that's dedication. The argument looped through accusations of entitlement on both sides, with Denise claiming the panel was struck, and Bean pointing out her lack of substantive questions. At the 15-minute mark, Colin was openly weeping, mascara running as she begged. "Denise, you're better than this. This isn't who you are," Denise declared. "This is exactly who I am, someone who won't be intimidated by entitled celebrities." Bean shook his head. "Entitled? I've taken your abuse for over 10 minutes without fighting back until now." Ruth rose, apologizing to viewers. "This is not representative of our standards." Denise screamed she was the only one with courage to tell the truth. Bean called it a breakdown on national TV. The tension peaked around the 18-minute mark when Denise whispered venomously, "Get out of my studio." Bean stared in disbelief, then delivered a measured takedown. "Your studio. This was supposed to be a team effort. You've turned a chance for real talk into a spectacle." As the clock hit 20 minutes, Bean removed his microphone with dignity. "I feel sorry for you. Whatever's eating you up, deal with it without hurting others." He addressed the others kindly: Ruth, Colin, Janet, pleasure, despite this. To the audience, sorry your morning turned unpleasant. Applause built as he exited. Denise deflated, realizing her isolation. Ruth whispered, "That was unexpected," as they cut to break. In 20 minutes, a routine interview became daytime TV history. A storm of chaos leaving dignity on one side and regret on the other.